First of all, I just have to say, Stephen, that we've known each other for a while, and I've taken an interest in your career. And your latest album is just a piece of brilliance.
Thank you very much.
I think it's
Okay.
incredible, in as much as it ticks all the boxes for me of all the stuff that I loved about things like Lamb Lies Down on Broadway and the grand conceptual pieces of prog rock from the 70s, but it doesn't sound old-fashioned at all. It just sounds fresh and innovative and beautiful and musical, and so I'm just getting that out of the way.
Well, that's music to my ears, excuse the pun, because that's exactly what I'm trying to achieve. I'm trying to take that kind of conceptual rock approach, to make it sound contemporary. So that's coming from you. That's amazing to hear, Martin. Thank you so much.
Well, you too. Did it do well in the charts? I mean, it's top 5, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was number 1 midweek, but as usual, I got overtaken by a bunch of hip hop artists that were doing phenomenal streaming numbers. That whole world for me is so.
I don't know how it works anymore, to be honest.
No, I don't either. I mean, I think some of these guys, they don't even release physical product anymore. It's just the sheer quantity of numbers they get on streaming platforms. So no, it did well. It did well. Like with most rock albums these days, it's all about week one. I think that's the disappointing thing for me about the modern age, is that a lot of records, they're so. I mean, listen, I'm very happy that I have such a dedicated and strong fan base, but it does mean that all of the sort of profile is very focused on week one. And you remember when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s. You remember when albums would hang around for weeks and weeks, and there'd be a 4th and a 5th single from the album, and the album would have a new lease of life because of the 4th single off the album. And that just doesn't is trying to sustain the interest. It's really hard now, really hard beyond week one.
I think it is. When we released Penthouse and Pavement, the highest they ever got was 14, but it stayed in the top 40 for 75 weeks.
Well, I'd give my right arm, for that kind of longevity. I'd be very happy to be a number 32 for 10 weeks. Rather than
not allowed to grow anymore,
No, I don't think so. It's just one of the many things that we can look at and sort of compare to how it was in the past and be grumpy old men about. But the answer to your question is it did. I think it was number 1 in Germany, and it was top 5 most places, which is great. And I'm out on tour now, so I'm kind of trying to give a bit more longevity by touring it.
Well, thanks for making the time. Have you played London already?
We did, yes. I did the Palladium. I did 4 nights at the Palladium back in May. So I'm out to America next. Yeah.
Wow. I think I've not seen you live. I really want to go and see you live. I should have.
Yeah, let's rectify that.
Yeah.
There will be another opportunity next year. I don't think I'm giving too much away to say that. There will be something else in London next year. Please do.
So let's talk about. I'm just doing you can't. I'm just going to encourage the podcast listeners to, go onto Wikipedia and see the gigantic amount of stuff that you've done. In fact, Cherub just contacted me earlier today saying, "Jesus Christ, how are we going to cram this into an hour?"
Who hasn't he worked with? It's amazing.
Yeah. I know you're interested in kind of drone music, and it's a topic that we've already recorded about 8 or 9 of these, and it's a topic that keeps coming back and back and back. Tell us about your relationship to the kind of hypnotic nature of music.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I've always when I was very young, I discovered I was into Tangerine Dream, and I discovered they had this album called Zeit, which had come out near the beginning of their career. And being a Tangerine Dream fan, I went out and bought it and was initially incredibly disappointed with it because it was music without structure. It was music without rhythm. It was music without melody. It was pure texture. But you know what? Because I'd spent my hard-earned pocket money on it, I kept listening to it, and I found it. I found what was special about it, and ever since that, I've loved this idea of music as analogous with perfume, something that just fills a room with a feeling, a smell, or in the case of this, a kind of a sound, and just kind of hangs there in the air and changes your relationship with the space you're in. And I think that's the beautiful thing about ambient music. One of the things I always found quite frustrating, and some of my fans are a bit like this, and I don't blame them for this, but I think it's just a question of, taste. But a lot of people will listen to ambient music and say it does nothing for them. It's not music. It's got no melody. It's got no rhythm. It's got no harmony. And yet those same people will go to the cinema to see a horror movie or something, and their feelings are being very strongly manipulated is the wrong word, but you know what I mean.
Oh no, it is manipulation.
Yeah.
Deliberately.
Okay. Well, that's true. Yeah. Their feelings are being very strongly manipulated a lot of the time by pure texture, pure sound. You think of those old David Lynch movies like Eraserhead, where there's just that white noise drone, and it gives you that incredible feeling of foreboding. And I've always loved that about the combination of sound and image too. But I also love ambient music, textural music, noise music, industrial music. I've always loved that just as a listening experience as well. As I say, just filling the room with a feeling. I adore it.
Filling the room with a feeling.
Yeah.
If we take nothing else from this podcast, that's enough, because we need more musicians doing that.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean when I use the analogy of it being like a perfume, perfume or an incense stick. You're just kind of letting this smell kind of permeate the space and change your feeling about it. And I think music has the same can have a similar quality. Yeah.
Well, especially both you and I have a huge interest in spatial sound. And you're getting all the gigs that I want, you bastard.
Well, you're giving me some of your own gigs, Martin. Some of your own gigs. Apparently, you don't want to mix your own records in spatial audio.
No, I do. I said I did, but they didn't want to pay me any money for it.
Oh well, that's where I'm a cheap date, you see, because I love doing it so much that I get asked if I want to do something, and I usually say yes, and then somewhere down the line I'll remember that I need to have the conversation about money. Usually by that time I'm halfway through the job.
Oh right, no, I'm very, very focused on making correct.
Well, fair enough, and you're right. You should be recompensed for it, but yes. Anyway, carry on.
We said that when they mentioned that you were going to be doing Phantasm Pavement. I think I'm right in saying that. Is that correct?
Well, it might be. I've got a partner called David Costin. Do you know David?
No.
Amazing producer as well. We'll probably be collaborating on it. But the other day I got asked about Private Dancer, about doing that in
They're all bastards.
Yeah. Well, if you want to do it, Martin, I don't know what the budget.
Damn, that's me, mate.
I can put you in. Yeah, but I'm sure they'd be happy to. I can put you in touch with the guy that asked me about that. Anyway, we digress. But yes, I mean, I've loved the idea of music as something that you're inside. To feel the music all around you. I've been in love with that ever since the first time I heard something in 5.1 many years ago.
Yeah. Did I tell you? I can't remember. I interviewed you for the other podcast, electronically yours. I can't remember if I mentioned to the guy who contacted me, an old retired radio DJ, used to work, I think, for Capital or something. Anyway, he collected quadraphonic 8 tracks.
Right.
Did I mention this to you?
You might have done. I mean, we probably did have that conversation about the history of spatial audio. I mean, for me, it goes back to what Stockhausen was doing in the 50s, which is incredible.
Oh, if Tim was on this call now, my sound partner Tim, he always compares it to that and says that was the start. Really, yeah. I wish.
Okay, I love this guy. I haven't met this guy. I don't know who he is, but I love him already. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people forget that Stockhausen was composing pieces of music for multiple orchestras, multiple choirs that would be positioned.
Yeah.
It's that piece Gruppen for 3 orchestras, one at the front and 2 in each corner at the back. And he was passing chords and melody around the audience. And this is in the mid-50s. I mean, in so many ways, that guy was so ahead of his time. It's ridiculous.
Absolutely.
And do you know about, you must know about Monteverdi and the...
I don't. No, I don't. Is he
Oh my God, I finally found something he doesn't know about.
experimenting with that kind of idea too?
Experimenting with using different naves and areas of San Marco Basilica.
Oh, and that must have been like, what, in the 17th century or something?
Yeah. That's, I can't remember the exact date, but it's round about then. And this was before opera had been properly formed. It was in the kind of nascent period where it was just kind of the vapors of creativity were coalescing. Oh, hello.
The creativity were coalescing.
Well, look, sorry, this is what happens when you have a hangover. I was playing last night in Belgium, so I've not had enough sleep. Yes, anyway, he did this. He placed different parts of the choir in different sections of the choir in like 7 or 8 different locations. The in there, and obviously you got a counterpoint and this, so it's exactly the same, really. So it goes back, and in fact it goes back to Neolithic times, really.
Yeah, we touched on this in the previous podcast we did the other day. And we were speaking about how, for example, there's a place in Malta, the Hypogeum, and there's actually marks along certain points of the walls where male voices would have actually projected tones at specific angles in the walls that then would create this standing wave of 111 hertz, which is this healing frequency awakening for the brain. So the ancients knew music was an ancient technology, and it's people like you guys that actually start to bring that essence in through your music in a different way, but you're still pulling into that same level of consciousness and making this kind of music that you're doing today. It's sonic architecture.
That's amazing. There's nothing new under the sun, is there? Whatever you think of, somebody did it then, and then somebody else did it before that. I didn't know any of that. That's amazing. That is amazing.
If you believe in, if you believe that we pass down experiential genetic information through through our history, I believe that somewhere buried deep down in our ancestral memory is the enormous impact that this stuff has.
Well, one guest member that we should bring on to discuss this further is Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, a British biologist who actually speaks about the morphogenetic field of resonance and how we can actually tap into that collective field to pull down all of the experiences that have gone on before. So that, that's music, it's ideas, it's inspiration. It's an interesting concept.
Do you know what? It just leading on from this, I was doing some seminars on mixing in Atmos earlier this week at Rack Studios, and I got into a conversation with one of the engineers that came along, and it was about this thing, the fear response. Do you know about this? So that basically we're kind of genetically wired when we hear a sound coming from behind us to actually feel fear, to be afraid. But surround sound can retrain our brains, rewire our brains to not have that fear response, which could be a good or a bad thing depending on your perspective. But I find that fascinating, that sort of that kind of atavistic thing, that where your natural reaction from a sound coming behind you is like, oh, I'm afraid of that, But surround sound is gradually changing the way that we kind of respond to the world around us. I find that all fascinating.
It's probably a primal response from the, being chased by the saber-tooth tiger kind of scenario.
Exactly this.
Shoulder.
I guess it still serves us. It serves us well in certain contexts to be slightly, your hairs in the back of your neck go up when you. But so us people mixing in spatial audio are ruining that.
Well, I don't know. I think you can use it as a vestigial technique to create a thrill.
Yeah.
But I remember discovering that when the sound of a bird, for instance, you make it swoop down through the head, actually does very slightly just give you a little bit of a shimmer, of not fear. You'll not identify it as that, but somewhere deep down. That's why it's so important and you know this, I'm sure, but it's something we should discuss. is for me, it's incredibly important when you're dealing with real sounds, I mean, you know, nature sounds or whatever, that they should be at a realistic level, and B, they should behave in a way that doesn't break the expectation. This is what I believe anyway. Have you ever tried this, by the way? This is interesting. Try and fly a bird as low as you can in a Dolby Atmos field, and it'll still sound like it's coming from up there.
Really? Okay, that's interesting.
Right.
And is that because of the way our brain is conditioned to assume that it's above us?
That's why,
Right.
with large-scale 3D soundscapes, particularly in ambisonics, if you try putting bass frequencies high physically in a space, you still perceive it as coming from lower.
Well, so I know bass frequencies are kind of what they say. They call them non-directional.
Yeah.
And the higher the frequency, the easier it is to understand which direction it's coming from. But of course, in Atmos, we now have speakers above the listener.
Yeah.
So we can literally put the bird. In fact, I've mixed a few records where there's been those kind of sound effects: rain, bird song, thunder, and you can actually now put them literally above the listeners, which is one of the things I love about Atmos.
Yep. So let's talk about a couple of other things. This will bring us all together. So you know about cymatics, right?
No.
Right. So you do, don't you, Cherub? Yeah. No? Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want me to explain it?
Yeah.
What is cymatics? Yeah, explain.
So it works on the premise that our body is made up of a large percentage of water, say 70 to 80% water. And cymatics is the physical representation of what sound does to the body. It creates these sacred geometrical snowflake-like absolutely exquisite patterns in the water content of our body. And because sound travels 5 times faster through water and through bone, funnily enough, than it does through our ear canal, it's the fastest way of transporting sound into our bodies. And because our bodies are made up of so much water, our bodies just display these in exquisite shapes, and that's then impacting the blood content. It creates really just a much more stronger coherent nervous system. So it's almost like we were designed to receive sound in this way. And when you see the patterns, we'll maybe put some pictures in the show notes for everybody. It's absolutely gorgeous, and there's been lots of studies done where you project sort of loving, harmonious tones on water and how that creates these gorgeous patterns that are all very coherent. I've even seen studies where they've measured, it's called crystallography, where they've measured the patterns that are within crystals compared to within rocks. And you can actually see the difference of when you project harmonious tones at water, the powerful and potent effect it's having on the brain and the body. So it would be very interesting to put some of your music through this system. You could actually, using a seismograph, you could look at what your music is doing to the water content of people's bodies. It's fascinating.
And how then can you sort of take that information and apply it to what you do?
Well, you can actually. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say more of an observational thing. I'm not, and we're very, very early stages of imagining even how this could be used in terms of treatment. But there's a great deal of building evidence that it does physically alter. Well, it definitely physically alters, but it can be used in a therapeutic way.
And it's old as time. Leonardo da Vinci, you could see that in some of his notes. Lots of cymatics explanations were found there. And it goes back hundreds of years, and people think it's more of a recent discovery, but cymatics has been studied and observed for hundreds of years. But to bring it into more of like an art sound installation type idea, it would be incredible, because you can actually project the visual images on, in huge spherical domes, for example, and so people can actually see firsthand what the music is doing to the body.
And create a kind of biofeedback loop, which would reinforce the effect. I mean, it works on, if you have a big metal plate and you scatter a thin layer of sand and you put different frequencies, it just changes patterns all the time. I mean, they're all geometric patterns, different ones.
Well, I certainly know that, certain sounds have a very tangible, physical, sort of effect on the body. I mean, that's a very positive. I remember, I'm sure you've read these stories as too, Martin. In fact, you might have even experienced it. I remember there were stories about Throbbing Gristle in the early days, trying to find the frequency that would make the audience actually soil themselves. This particular thing, Genesis P.O., trying to find that sort of low frequency. Obviously, that's a very negative, very sort of, negative. But I guess in some ways that's the other side of the same coin, right? I mean, there are certain frequencies have actually very strong physical effect on our body.
Yes, there are some. I remember going to see a big sound installation at the Venice Art Biennale. It was in the Austrian pavilion in the Giardino, and it was just. It was a sound and light exhibition, so it had alternating frames of opposite colors. So red and green, but like 24 frames a second. That's enough to send you into a trance anyway,
Right.
or worse.
Trippy.
Tripping or anyway, it's dangerous stuff to be playing with. But they also had extremely loud those kind of Throbbing Gristle, probably 40 hertz and lower stuff. I could only stand it it was continuous. It went all day. I could only stand it for about 20 seconds. I started feeling like I was going to fall over. So I've witnessed it, and it's not pleasant. And which brings me on to the dark uses of sound, actually. I'm not saying that we're all nice people, aren't we? And I would never... Oh, this is an interesting story, actually. I was approached by a British international arms manufacturer at the early days of when I was doing 3D sound to ask if I would work with the US Army on a top secret project, probably Area 51 in the Nevada desert. Said you'd have to be away from your family and everything for 6 months, but we'll pay you $1 million.
What did they want you to do?
It's to work. It was to work on heads up. I suspect it was weapons, actually, but sonic weapons.
Sonic weapons.
But they didn't admit that. What they were saying was, they wanted to work on ears up. Got heads up displays like you've got like augmented reality displays for fighter pilots because they have such little time to make decisions and stuff. So instead of there being a cockpit with lots of controls, it would be in the glasses. So they were working on this 20 years ago when they approached me. But what they were interested in is ears up displays in spatial sound delivered for binaural. So they have another stream of data coming into them. So they would sonify the location of a nearby aircraft or weapons that were tracking them, so they could actually hear them as though they were in the open air and they could hear them, right? Notwithstanding it's arms manufacture, it's quite an interesting concept. But I don't, hey, let's help people kill people more efficiently. It's not really...
Do you know that old Hawkwind track with Michael Moorcock lyrics called Sonic Attack? In case of sonic attack, follow these rules. It's that, isn't it? It's that.
Robert Calvert, I believe. Probably.
That's right, yeah. I think the lyrics were by Michael Moorcock, but recited by...
He was obsessed with military stuff when he did that.
Right.
What was the name of his solo album?
Where he did one about the planes, didn't they? The planes, Captain Lockheed and the
Starfighters.
Yeah, with Vivian Stanshall.
Weird fucking album I bought.
Very weird. Eno's on that, isn't he? Vivian Stanshall was like one of the characters, isn't he? Yeah.
It made me feel a bit uncomfortable, to be honest. It's very machismo kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I guess that was...
Well, here's a good one.
Yeah.
The relevance of sound to female and male experiences, and do the different genders or even transgender, whatever, do we all experience sound and its relationship to emotion in the same way? That's good discussion points.
I like it. It's personal. It's so personal to the individual. It has to be.
This is what happens when I have a hangover. All weird shit turns up.
Isn't it just more about musical taste? Everyone has, everyone has a different ear for comedy. Everyone has a different ear for music, don't they? So I don't know if it will be gender specific, but certainly everyone responds in a very different. Like I said to you, I have a hard time just persuading some people that ambient music is even music at all. Because if you take away the things that are kind of the signposts for what they think of as a piece of music, melody, harmony, and rhythm, they find it very hard to relate to it as music at all. So, and yet there are people that absolutely adore that, So I think it's just a question of taste, isn't it, really?
I think it's the same with sound healing as well. I've been playing in this field 15 years, and in the early days, I couldn't get people to come and experience this. It was so new, it was niche, it was spiritual, too esoteric. People thought that they didn't get it. And now people are queuing up for it, and it's mainstream, and it's in the press, and it's everywhere. It has been a journey to get it to where it is now. And I think that, but yet to this day, there's still people that don't get it, that wouldn't consider it to be music. It's a very, in a way, sound healing is the closest thing to ambient music, because it is more of like a soundscape that, that ebbs and flows, and you drift within it. It's not a piece of music. So
that makes perfect sense to me. Yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. I've always found certain albums, as one album in particular I can think of by a guy called Stephen Stapleton, he goes under the name of Nurse with Wound. And it's an album called Soliloquy for Lilith. And I've always said that album is a mood magnifier. So whatever mood you're in, when you put it on, it will magnify it. So if you're in a negative state of mind, it will make you feel more depressed. And I find that fascinating. And it's a purely ambient record. There's no texture, there's no melody, no rhythm, as I said to it. And I found certain records operate like that. Certain records can make you feel calmer. Certain records can make you feel more uncomfortable, and certain records, they're more ambivalent. They just magnify whatever mood you're already in. Yeah. So fascinating that all these different kinds of music have almost different properties, and I'm sure there's a scientific reason for it. Something to do with the intervals or the frequencies of the sound.
The intention of the producer, that's a big part of it as well. I've seen studies where two different conductors have conducted the exact same piece of music. One of them with a good intention, one of them with a bit of a darker one, and then people it impacts people.
Yeah, the greatest example of that I've ever witnessed was I was obsessed with Mahler, and still am, actually.
Me too.
And every time Mahler's Ninth was performed in London, I would go and see it. So I've seen pretty much most of the world's great orchestras who are touring perform it, and the difference is absolutely incredible. I know they don't have tempo, they don't have 110 beats per minute or whatever and all that stuff, but the amazing difference, the best one I ever saw actually was it was the Berlin Symphony Orchestra, and I can't remember the name of the conductor, but it was really stately. That's the only way I can describe it. Kind of intentionally slower and more involving because of it. Whereas some conductors take a piece of music and it's like they're almost like rushing through certain parts of it.
Well, I think they say that generally about classical repertoire, don't they? That we're performing the pieces much too fast now. Yes. Compared to how the composer intended them 100, 200, 300 years old, and at different pitches as well, because now everything is at 440 concert pitch. And forgive me if I get this wrong, but wasn't the original 4/6 something different, wasn't it? Yeah. And little differences like that in pitch and frequency obviously make different effect on the body, different effect on our ears. I'm not an expert on any of this, but I find it all fascinating. Yeah.
Well, seemingly 432 is just more naturally aligned with our composition, and then those mathematical equations also are mirrored throughout nature and throughout the cosmos, and it's it's ancient Greek music system. It just seems to be more aligned with the human body physically.
Do you know why it changed? It's an amazing.
There are some interesting
theories. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard why it changed. Why it was?
One theory is that because it was very popular with the rise of Nazism in Germany, that that certain composers wanted to change it, because I can't remember the exact details, but they wanted something more regular, because there was some magical with a magic with a
K.
UK, yeah, magical connotation with 432, which they then interpreted as having some kind of evil connotation. Am I right, Cherub, or am I talking bollocks?
No, I've read all of these myself. I mean, I used to subscribe to that as well. There doesn't seem to be enough. There's just not enough evidence to say either way. But it is a theory that it's loosely, the change to 440 is loosely attached to Nazi propaganda. The what was his name? The guy who actually, there was a guy who here Goebbels. It was kind of pinned on him. But I've dug into a little bit, and there were conferences where they officially changed it to 440 throughout Western civilization, and seemingly he wasn't at that conference. But so much time has gone by that it's hard to say whether it's true or not. But it seems that the shared reality that everyone's agreed on is that it was changed and pitched up so that all orchestras across the land could play together. But, you know, knowing our governments, there probably is some darker undertones as to why, especially when there have been some studies here and there that suggest that 432 is just more aligned and 440 is a bit more higher chakra, gets us kind of working and makes us a little bit more, what's the word, compliant to follow, as opposed to be independent thinkers. But again, not enough studies really done either way to say for sure. These are all very interesting theories and debates.
By the way, did you realise that Cherub is AI generated, by the way?
What? I don't believe that.
It's so perfect, so grok-like.
He's very smart. I'll give you that. Yeah. Yes.
And my outfit matches my painting in the background. That's got to be AI produced.
Yeah.
Background and clothing, every single one. She's really thinking this through.
Well, it's all part of it.
Yeah. So anyway, just before we leave the whole kind of negative side of things, there were things like, you know, we all know about the high frequency stuff that's used to deter teenagers in Leicester Square. You know about that, right?
No, I don't think so.
The technology. It's basically 20 hertz.
Right.
But very loud. Now I'm nearly 70. I can't hear above 12.
No, I mean, I'm about 13, 14K now. And you keep
diminishing it.
very to test yourself on the internet, isn't it?
Yeah.
Have you lost levels of hearing then through doing the work you do?
Well, I think it's an age thing anyway, isn't it? So gradually your top end does sort of shelve off. But probably also years and years of standing next to drummers, pushing a ride cymbal or a crash cymbal in my ear, playing on tiny little stages in tiny clubs at the beginning of my career, probably didn't do me much good, if I'm honest. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's a natural thing with age, I think, as well.
Yeah, and if you think you might have lost a few layers of hearing, but the life experience, the joy that you brought to others, totally worth it to lose a few layers of hearing for that, I think.
Well, that's a nice way of looking at it, yeah.
Same for me. I mean, I was on the receiving end of that, clubbing for 10 years all around the world, following the festival. So I dare say my hearing is aging beyond my actual age as well, but worth it.
Have you heard about this thing where they reckon when you overload, if you imagine a graphic analyzer, if you overload a particular narrow range of frequencies, but massively, that frequency then basically drops out of your perception?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Is that a real thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can give you an actual practical example of that. So drummers, these days, drummers are all playing to a click track, right?
Yeah.
So I can tell you every few years, the drummers I know, they have to change the frequency of the click, because bit, but, bit, after 3 years of that, they can't hear it anymore. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that frequency, bit, and they start to be able to struggle to be able to hear it. So they just change the frequency, like by, a few hertz, and then suddenly they can hear it again.
Apparently,
Wow.
that is a physical change. It's to do with the cilia in the inner ear that get damaged and can't actually perceive that. Very narrow.
Yeah, extremely narrow, particularly pinpointed on a
Yeah.
frequency. Yeah, yeah.
But this is cumulative and apparently it doesn't grow back.
No.
So it would make sense that over time, maybe we're more sensitive earlier in our lives to higher frequencies because it's a survival thing. And maybe, I don't know.
Do you have tinnitus, Martin? Do you have any tinnitus at all?
I don't actually, no.
Yeah, I mean, I have a little bit. I mean, it's obviously a very common thing, particularly with rock bands, rock musicians that have been standing on stages with drummers and with big loud amplifiers. I have it a little bit. I mean, that's a whole fascinating area too, isn't it? That you have a constant, quite the opposite. You have a constant frequency in your head.
That would drive me crazy, I think.
I had it from years of clubbing, but when I moved into sound healing and took myself away from my environment and slowly healed my ears, it happened just through projecting calm, soothing.
Really?
tones. Yeah, just
So you can cure it then.
yeah. I mean, and I know a few people who have from different methods as well, but tuning forks are great for that. It's almost like it starts to retune your inner ear over time. I'll send you some. Let's see if it helps.
Because Pete Townsend has to play on stage in this sort of like glass thing, this glass bubble. Or at least he has to have the drummer in a glass bubble. And I tell you who else suffers really badly from tinnitus is Andy Partridge. Really, really bad, quite debilitating. Having to sleep with a fan constantly on, even in the middle of winter, just to mask this sound. And I think but it's interesting, Cherub, that you said you've managed to cure yourself of it, because I wasn't sure you could.
I think people have. For mine was very mild. It was never that as bad as that. It was light. The problem for me was it was stopping me from singing in tune on stage, because you've got this tone in your ear and you have to override that tone to find your own tone. I found that so difficult, and at one point it did get a bit much. But just from taking myself away from the environment that had done the damage and using tuning forks every day over time, it just wore away. And I don't know if that would work for somebody who's got it on an extreme level, but it's certainly worth a try.
I might mention it to Andy. Andy got it from headphones, from basically recording in his home studio and just hearing stuff too long, too loud and for too long on his headphones, and he's basically damaged his ears now. Yeah, I wonder if he could cure it. Anyway,
let's find. There has to be a solution to that. And if I don't know the answer, I'm sure someone in my network will, because it is prolific for people who have been in the music industry for decades.
Very much.
So let's pool our resources and heal those ears.
I'll mention it too. Yeah.
Another question I have for you is, are you synesthetic, or do you have any element of synesthesia?
Well, kind of. I always say I see. We were talking at the beginning of the conversation about, my new record and how it's a conceptual rock record and all that stuff. And I've always said that I see the music before I hear it. Now I know that's not quite the same thing, although it is kind of related. I think I've always thought of albums as analogous with seeing a movie. So you've got two sides of an old vinyl record, or if you've got 60 minutes or however you think of your physical product, you've got that much time to take the listener on some kind of journey. So a movie for the ears. And I love albums to have that sense of narrative and journey to them. And I think that does come from the fact that I grew up loving movies just as much as I loved music. And always kind of seeing them as synonymous in a way, and the combination of the two as being potentially the most powerful art form of all. So I don't know if that's the same thing you're asking. It's kind of an aspect of it, isn't it, to be making music and kind of imagining it as a movie. So that's kind of synesthesic in a way, isn't it?
Do you ever
For the ears.
Do you ever smell your music?
No, not aware of. No.
We were just talking about sonic sense. You were talking about it, and
Someone will say yes to that question eventually, but
I know.
asking it.
But it's very interesting because there are some analogous things to do with scent. I was lucky enough to work with one of the world's leading scent artists, Cecil Talas, on a project And she took me into a laboratory, and I smelled all sorts of amazing things as she explained it. She had a mass spectrometer so she could analyze and capture smells and then reproduce them and all this stuff. And she actually, I think I'm right in saying this, she used to work for this company called, it's something like, it was like something out of Man from Uncle. It was called International Fragrances Incorporated, which basically were the kind of scientific laboratory that provided information for what would be popular with,
Right.
their customers. So she worked for them. So she was a scientist, but also she had an incredible sense of smell. And she invented, the molecular perfumes. The molecule, the brand.
Okay.
They're everywhere now. Anyway,
Okay.
she discovered that there's this molecule that she discovers, a single molecule that actually, if you put it in a scent profile, it amplifies everything. So in other words, if you're creating an incredibly expensive scent with incredibly rare ingredients, like some of the great French perfumers and Caron and Guerlain and all that, they can use the same number of ingredients but in much smaller amounts, and therefore increase their profit by. It's like, it just reminded me when you were talking about amplifying.
Yeah, Moog
Excellent.
amplifiers. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because there's a whole bunch of mostly American R&B artists now that have moved from being pop musicians into creating perfumes and scents. So it seems to be a thing now. It's like a career, it's like a sideways career move to go from making music, writing songs, producing records, to marketing. I mean, it's probably a bit of a marketing thing to be honest. But people like Ariana Grande and Beyonce, they've all got their own scents now. It seems to be a very sort of hip hop R&B thing to do.
Gwyneth Paltrow did a scent of her vagina, didn't she?
Did she? Yeah.
It's called Gwyneth
Yeah.
Paltrow. This is my vagina, I think.
Oh my God. Okay.
That.
I think you're only pay with that if that's all right by me, Gwyneth.
So now I have a great pun. I can say there's definitely a gap in the market. Apologies for that. Apologies for that. It just came into my head. I had to say it. It's like Ricky Gervais says, if you think of a terrible joke, you have to verbalize it. Compulsory.
Oh, don't get me started. I'm over. Yeah, no, it's good. We need some lightheartedness after all that cerebral stuff. Okay, so right, very important question. This, I think, has kind of world music. I hate that term, but music from around the world, different cultures, influence what you do in any recognized way.
Well, this whole notion of world music now, I mean, what is that now? I think, we live in a very sort of, because of the internet now and the modern age, we live in a very kind of global community 24/7, don't we? So whereas things, I mean, I've talked about this before, I may even have talked about it on your other podcast when we talked, was this idea that things like the symphonic form took centuries to spread and to mutate and to develop and to reach all the corners of the earth. And now a kid in his bedroom that comes up with some new concept for music, everyone knows about it the following morning and everyone's imitating it the following morning. So the speed at which sort of news, information, memes, all those things kind of catch on now is so fast. So I mean, I remember when I was growing up in the 80s, there was this thing, I remember Peter Gabriel had this festival called WOMAD, and he was working with African musicians and Bulgarian music and all this. And yes, I was fascinated by that. But does that notion still exist in 2025?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think certainly the global South is massively undercredited and underappreciated for its for its innovation. Certainly, Africa and South America.
I guess what I'm getting at is I think a lot of that has been absorbed now. A lot of things that maybe were I mean, the first time you heard, say, Talking Heads Remain in Light. The use of African beats was very novel and very fresh in Western pop music, wasn't it? Whereas now I think it's so familiar and so common in hip hop and rock and all these other kinds of music.
Yeah.
So I think what this idea, this notion of world music was very exotic once. I think the answer to your question is yes, absolutely. Everything I've ever listened to, whether I've liked it or not, I like to feel like I've learned from it. And of course, I do like a lot of world music, and that can be everything from, you know, in microtones, in Indian or you know, gamelan microtones, to African rhythms, to Bulgarian polyrhythms. I mean, some of the Bulgarian folk music is ridiculously complicated rhythmically. Music from Cyprus and Greece, it's perfectly normal for folk musicians to be playing 11 and 17. And of course, that's kind of exotic to English, certainly to English ears. Yeah. I love that stuff. Yeah.
You've said in interviews that you're less concerned with genre and more focused on emotion. And that's exactly what you're expressing now, that you can actually traverse every different type of music and blend it all together. And that's where the emotion comes from. And we break down that word emotion in the spiritual sense, emotion, energy in motion. So that's what it is that you're expressing. So you're taking inspiration from everywhere and putting it through your own personal conduit and delivering soundscapes that do evoke all kinds of emotions, the whole spectrum of emotion in the listener.
I definitely try. Yeah, I think it's one of the curses of being a lover of a music lover is sometimes being too influenced by stuff and wearing your influences on your sleeve. And it you know, and it gets harder and harder. The proliferation of content, it's a horrible word, but I'll use it anyway. The proliferation of content now, music, TV, there's too much of everything. And so to find your own unique style has probably never been harder. And one of the things that's very easy to do, of course, now is imitate, because we live in a world where you can download a piece of software that will give you instantly the sounds that you're hearing on the records you're listening to. And that wasn't always the case. And I think a lot of the great music has been made by people kind of trying to imitate, but somehow failing to achieve it, but kind of like naturally creating something fresh anyway. I mean, lest we forget, the Beatles started off imitating American rock and roll. Led Zeppelin and the Rolling Stones started off imitating Chicago bluesmen. But I think there comes a point where I like to think there comes a point where you transcend that and you just make music in a very kind of intuitive, and you're just kind of painting with all these colors and all these things you've learned over years and years, but no longer in a very self-conscious way. And I'd like to think I've got to that point now. You can still hear my influences, I'm sure you can, but I hope I'm kind of painting with them in a way that creates some unique hybrid that's instantly recognizable only as a Steven Wilson record.
Oh. Can you have you ever done I'm sure you have you ever done or wanted to do a huge orchestral piece?
I haven't, and yes, I would love to. And right now I'm looking at possibly that event I was referring to earlier about London next year is going to potentially be along those lines. And I don't want to give too much away yet, but yes, that's definitely on my bucket list, Martin. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because you know, it makes sense. You have a really expert command of timbre and, you know, spectral arrangement and understanding now of spatial arrangement as well. It just, to me, it makes sense to transpose that into the most amazing instrument of all, which is a large scale orchestra. Well, maybe incorporating other, you know, kind of instruments from around the world, not just traditional Western instruments.
Well, I mean, I love the idea of sort of combining electronic instruments with, you know, with orchestral instruments. Obviously, it's been done. You know, I'm not saying it hasn't been, but for me, that would certainly be the appeal to combine, say, analog synthesizers with orchestral instruments. Yes. Have you done anything like that? Have you done a sort of large scale orchestral project?
No, but it fascinates me. I mean, when we recorded Luxury Gap, we had a 8-piece orchestra in the studio, and
I mean, I've done that. I mean, and that's so exhilarating, isn't it? I remember the first time
Most
I hired an orchestra, I was crying. I was crying. You know, to hear your music played, just the sound,
Oh,
the sound. It's so multidimensional in a way.
I've worked with some of the most rabid musicians, you know, I mean, the most traditional rock and roll people that are most cynical, the most off their faces. They all just genuflect to the power of orchestral music, and it didn't have to necessarily be a huge orchestra, but traditional instruments. I remember we once recorded. We had a harpist from the LPO come in to record some harp, and all these everybody who was in the band at the time, they all insisted on being in the control room simultaneously to just watch her work. It was a thing of transcendental and ethereal beauty.
Well, I know you're not a massive fan, Martin, but I saw Florence of Florence and the Machine at the Royal Albert Hall last year. And she performed her debut album, Lungs. It was the 15-year anniversary of performing that with a huge orchestra. And I know you don't love the music, but honestly, it was one of the most transcendental experiences. It was exquisite. So for her to perform live with this, I think it was like a 60-piece orchestra, something huge in the Royal Albert Hall. It was magic. I'll remember it forever.
Yeah, we did a gig last year with the Leeds Contemporary Orchestra or whatever in outdoors, and it was like that. There's a 70-piece orchestra doing Let Me Go and Temptation. It sounded like Bond themes. It was incredible. Yeah, anyway, that's neither here nor there. Speaking of transcendental, I think you're really good at that, Stephen. I think you're good at creating those moments in your compositions which just give you that thrill as you know, I mean, I'm a musician. I understand the technical complexities of the different time signatures, the surprises, the harmonic beauty of what you're trying to achieve. But to an average listener, they'll probably just go, "Wow," you know.
But that's exactly what I want, you know. So that's the thing about, you know, obviously I'm known as someone that works in the field of progressive rock. Now, a lot of progressive rock is kind of willfully complex for the sake of it, you know, and actually that's not what I'm about at all. I keep reminding people that, for example, Money by Pink Floyd is in 7, you know, but you wouldn't necessarily need to know that just to think it's a great pop song.
Of course.
And so that kind of being able to create complexity in the music, but in a way that doesn't kind of bash the listener over the head with, look how clever I am, listen to how complicated this music is. That's never been, I'm always looking for that emotional kick. And I think that comes from the fact that I grew up with, the same time my dad was brainwashing me with Pink Floyd and Mike Oldfield, my mum was listening to ABBA and the Carpenters and the Bee Gees. And I loved them equally. Equally. And I still find some moments of profound, you use the word transcendence, you know, in God Only Knows by the Beach Boys, almost you transcendent, beautiful piece of music.
Greatest symbol of all time, I think.
Exactly. And there's something almost religious in that. I'm not a religious person, but I kind of understand that sort of principle of religious fervor and spiritual, you know, kind of well-being that comes from listening to something like that. That still is my religion. So it's very nice of you to say so, but I guess I'm always looking for those kind of pop thrills, those moments of transcendence and profound beauty that will just that have that effect on me when I hear them in other people's music. Yeah.
You're a master craftsman.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Sound.
A lifetime of listening and learning, I guess, from movies and from novels as well. Yeah.
What movies in particular then would have stood out to you when you were growing up to send you on this path?
Well, I was always looking, you know, I was a rather obnoxious, precocious child that was always looking for things that were outside of the mainstream, you know, and that applied to everything. So I was always, you know, I grew up in the era when you could go down to your local library and take out records and take out books and take out DVDs and even VHS videos. So I was always discovering these things that were right on the periphery of what was, you know, considered mainstream, and discovering filmmakers like Stanley Kubrick and David Lynch, who they're kind of mainstream, but they're not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So a movie like Elephant Man, for example, is still one of the most profoundly beautiful and moving things I've ever seen in my life. And it is the combination of the soundtrack and specifically the use of pure sound design, pure texture and pure sound design, and the way he uses the sound of musical boxes and things to kind of transport you back to that Victorian era. And then combine that with the black and white photography and the 35mm black and white photography and his directorial style, which is always just somehow has a sense of otherness to it. Kubrick had this too. You'd be watching something that was very realistic, but at the same time, it was just slightly removed from reality.
Yeah.
Gave you a sense of otherness. And those two guys, particularly for me, are still my favorite directors. Yeah.
They're yeah, I mean Kubrick, amazing. But yeah, I mean, have you read David Lynch's autobiography? It's amazing.
I've read several books about it. I read a book called Lynch on Lynch, which is kind of along those lines, but that's more him talking about his move. And what I love about Lynch, and I think this is true of so many musicians I've met too that I admire, is they struggle really to explain to you what it is that they do.
Yeah.
Because it's so intuitive and it's just something that comes from their inner core and their being. And I found that with a lot of artists that I adore is they really can't tell you what they do or why they do it. And I'm suspicious of people who can.
I love the fact that David Lynch is on one level, when you hear him talking, I mean, like the audiobook, for instance, is an incredible experience because you hear him talking and you think, is he a little bit kind of stupid?
He's like the
They're
opposite.
so simple.
Yeah. He's like the opposite of a sort of pretentious intellectual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he talks about something incredibly banal and everyday, and then all of a sudden it'll just twist. And that's a perfect metaphor for it, the way he creates stuff. Anyway, we're all a bit like that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's people always say, all musicians are kind of on the spectrum, or all the people that are the most creative. There is an element of them that's kind of on the spectrum, and I completely subscribe to that.
Yeah, it's just like tapping into that extra layer of reality that others can't access. That's what makes them brilliant.
Yeah, and also I think being able to tap into the logic of dreams. Everyone dreams, but most people don't carry that through into their waking life. Except I think creative people can and do. They somehow have a way of carrying that kind of dream logic, and bizarre things happen in your dreams. Things get put together that you would never put together in a waking state, but in your dream logic you do. And I think great artists, or even just good artists, have an ability to somehow carry that through into the real world, and I don't know how that works.
I have a question for you. Do you practice lucid dreaming?
I do, yeah. And it's pretty simple to do. All you have to do to begin is just simply write your dreams down. As soon as you wake up, you have a pen and paper next to you, write your dreams down for about 2 weeks. Even if all you can remember is red, just write that down. Over the period of 2 weeks, you'll start to remember more and more, to the point where you're writing 3 pages after every single night. And then after that, there are certain practices that you can do to start amplifying the dreaming. Like, for example, I don't wear a watch, but if you wear a watch all day, you keep checking down and going, am I dreaming? No, I've got a watch on. I'm not dreaming. And in dream state, because you've been writing your dreams down for so long, you're becoming very connected to it. You can actually start to become loose in your dreams. And the first thing you do to check is you go, am I dreaming? You look down, you've not got a watch on, because for some reason you cannot wear a watch in a dream. So if you've not got your watch on, you know you're dreaming. And then all of a sudden you realize you're lucid, and you have just a few small seconds before you lose it and you drop back into unconsciousness again. But over time, you can actually stretch that state to the point where as soon as you realize you're lucid dreaming, you can fly out your window and fly over the Great Pyramids and start learning from ancient scrolls written in gold that have got the history of the whole of the civilization. And you wake up and you can semi-remember it and write it down. So it's a process, but it's totally achievable. The Buddha said living twice, being awake in dream, in waking state.
And the dream diary is something I've always meant to do, and I've never got around to it. But that's interesting. But I don't wear a watch, so what would be another thing I could do to?
Well, I always have gold jewelry on, so I just, like, you know, for example, this necklace, I'll just or my engagement ring, I've got my wedding. Perfect. Well, let's see if wedding rings exist in the dream. If maybe it does, but just try it. Am I dreaming? Am I dreaming? Am I dreaming? 3 times, and then once you've been writing your dreams down for a few weeks, see if you can get to the point in your dream where you can tune into that.
I really need to do this. I've been planning to do it for so many years. Yeah.
First step,
new album coming on.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly that.
Call it dream logic, because what you said earlier, I don't know if that's a phrase you've already used, but dream logic, what you said before, it's a great name for an album.
Well, it is, but you know what I mean by that. I mean, it's just you put things together in dreams that actually make no sense in a logical way. And I think when I watch a David Lynch movie, I feel like what I'm seeing a lot of the time is his dreams. It's things he's put together in his dreams that he's somehow been able to carry forward and carry through into his art.
You know what I loved about his TV series work is, I remember the furore when he got to the end of
Twin Peaks,
and they're going, well, it didn't make any sense where there's no ending.
No.
But there was never a beginning or an end. You know, that's the point.
That's what I love about it.
Being in the moment, you could probably watch those episodes in any order you want.
Yeah,
I love that shit. Anyway,
that's what I think. That's why, as a kid, I was. This is going back to our earlier conversation. That's why I was attracted to these kind of films that had a kind of European sensibility. This is a massive simplification, of course, but the kind of Hollywood American thing is everything has to be neat, everything has to have a logical narrative, and everything has to tie up nicely at the end. And then there was the European sensibility, which came from people like Fellini, but also American directors like Kubrick and Lynch completely had that too, where it doesn't have to make sense because it makes you think.
Yeah,
and it brings you into the equation. It asks you questions, and it makes you a part of the process. And I love that. I love that in music, and I love that in cinema, and I love that in literature.
That's a great way to end this, I think, because we've over time.
Well, I was just about to launch into a whole other topic there. I wish we could have longer.
Part 2 to come, maybe.
What was it?
Oh, I was just going to progress on from that, but we'll do that for our next one.
Part 2 in a few months, if the podcast is still going, which I believe it will be.
Absolutely will be. Keep the faith.
But I have to ask you a couple of questions, as you know, at the end. They're not as stupid as the previous ones that I asked you. What is your favorite natural sound?
Well, my wife is horrified and fascinated by the fact that I love rain. She's from Israel, you see, so she grew up in this hot country so she hates rain. I love rain, and I go to sleep every night with the white noise app, set to heavy rain. So there you go.
There you go.
Heavy rain pouring. It's my favorite sound. There you go.
I've just moved into a new Muse house, and it's got lots of Velux windows, and I didn't know what the house was going to sound like when I moved into it. The first day we had heavy rain, it was like, oh my God, this is my dream. It's like not quite a tin roof, but it's like, it fills the house with sound. Anyway.
Yeah, it's like, do you remember that song? Oh, it's raining again, loud on your car like bullets on tin. People love it. People love the rain.
Well, this app, I don't know if you know this app, guys, with the white noise app, you've got things like rain on a tent. So you're inside, you know, that sound. And you've got rain on a tin roof. There you go. Rain. Rain on Tank. It's called White Noise. It's free. It's a free app. Rain on a lake. Rain on a metal roof. There you go.
There we go. That's the one.
That's you, isn't it, Martin? Yeah.
Say,
Yeah. So they've got all these things. Rain on a car roof. Yeah, there you go. It's brilliant. I absolutely love this app. Yeah.
what's your favorite piece of ambient music?
Well, I think Tangerine Dream Zeit for me is still year zero in terms of ambient. So that was my gateway into ambient music. But I also love that record I talked about earlier, the Mood Magnifier, which is by Nurse with Wound. And it's Soliloquy for Lilith. It's from the mid 80s. Adore that record too. But yeah, there's a couple. Yeah.
And okay, what I was going to ask you what is your favorite piece of my favorite moment in somebody else's work that's transcendental for you, or one of them. You know, there's so
Favorite moment. Favorite moment.
I don't know. There's certain compositions where there's just one.
No, you're right.
If I do a second autobiography, I'm going to call it Mining for Magic, because I think this
is
magic, little moments of magic.
No, you're right. This is fascinating. There was a British music journalist actually wrote a piece a while ago about how actually pop music is really, it's not about songs even. It's about moments in songs.
Yeah.
And I think it might have been Bernard Butler from Suede who says his favorite piece of music is the reverb trail in the middle of Good Vibrations.
Oh, right.
Where it goes, and there's a little pause before it goes back into the good. He says his favorite thing in the whole history of music, it may not have been Bernard Butler, but someone of that ilk. He says his favorite moment in the whole history of music is the trail of reverb that exists in that pause in Good Vibrations.
Have you heard the sessions of that being recorded?
I have. Yeah, the box set that came out a long time ago.
Amazing, isn't it?
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, that's
All
education.
illustrations of the stems and everything.
Yeah. Well, as an education listening to that, isn't it? Yeah. All of the a cappella vocal pieces and all of the overdubs. Yeah. But I don't know what my equivalent would be. I don't know. I'd have to that's a hard one, Martin. You'd have needed to
Very hard
to come up with a good answer. I would have to think about that. But I do definitely subscribe to that idea that a lot of what is most extraordinary about music are these little moments. There's a moment in a Max Richter piece I've been listening to recently, and it's just a certain moment that the orchestra swell, and it just kills me every time. And it only lasts about 4 or 5 seconds. So maybe that's the kind of thing you're talking about.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I want people to go away from listening to these podcasts and do their own research, you know, and I'm not going to be one of those podcasts where we just give them a list of links, because people are so fucking lazy. It's unbelievable. Just put it in a search term and it'll come up. Anyway, that's it. We did it.
Brilliant. All right. Well, we managed to talk for an hour, so
Yeah, more than an hour with so much more to cover. So I hope we get you back.
We'll definitely do part 2 if you're up for it.
yeah, really, I'm enjoying it.
I genuinely do think that I think it's the best thing you've ever done. The latest.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Everybody needs to go and listen to it.
The overview. Yeah, it's called the overview for your listeners. Yeah.
Brilliant. All right, man. I will
So much.
no doubt very soon.
And we look forward to your concert in London next year. We'll be there front row.
Watch this space. Yeah. Fantastic. Thanks, guys. Enjoy the rest of it.
Bye.
Bye now.